당zo ni guilong gom chi go sro Losang da ke kash.
Good evening, everyone. Let's kick start with a motivation meditation.
Guilong di da yong da re wa di yun tan da ji dan da san jie shu dan so ji shu na la chi ju bo da ni jin da ge jin so ji be sin chun da ge chun ye ji be sin di da ting gu de wa di zo guilong je ya zo san jie shu zo ma char sum jo ya di ni guilong chan ju sim ji guilong ge sim ya chi de chan ju ge sim ma je wa dang ge wa ani ji kong de pe ya ge wa de ma nyam ba chi ya nenge da chue nyen be sonam te da tamje ni chiti jo simje tamje shi du sanje ji ko ma to te gyula to ju ji si ji da di ngone gulong kom ja ya da sik tele ha ga da te me bra shi res ba
So, for motivation, generally speaking, there is no better stanza and reminder than what is stated in Refuge and Bodhicitta stanza that we have recited and we do recite every time. And therefore, I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. And may I achieve enlightenment through acts of listening to Dharma and so on. So this one, dagi chunin gibe sonam gi, thonam gi, through the merit such as receiving teaching, may I achieve Buddhahood. So this one really should easily arouse bodhicitta that has not been aroused, and that which has arisen doesn't decline, but instead it increases. It keeps on waxing all the time. So one intends to use the merit from these to achieving enlightenment.
ya da ga wa gong ran zu din de chu jing yang am jo le tu ji chung ha di na ge wa sang gu yi je ga wa gom jo sro
So now please rejoice in the fact that one has this opportunity yet again to listen to the teachings.
어야 나 나도 나가서 따왕하게 나게 다 따와 당부 지다 다디 건라다 삼로 땅토비나 빼야고 요레스 나란서 정말로다 단다 메제나야지 강이다 삼범마지와 땅 지망고지 아 용대어디 자와 어디 다직다 nga zimbe chikda da nga yuwa zimbe chikda sayada dila dine yungu yore zawa dire sta ngune ya tatu na di wangi nga zo ani kangi tete ki yore cheza dila ani thangbuk ani chikda saya di tawa di tawa lokba di da khande ji imi di yabu chi hako na ani tawa chima di ye di ngo choya la le lhawa yore la nga ranzo 초응어가 나라니 펜도 친구 요레스티 삼당 투비너로
So we have been dealing with we have been dealing with the afflictions, mental afflictions. So we have finished dealing with 5 affective mental afflictions, and we started dealing with 5 cognitive or view mental afflictions, the first of which is called jikta, the view of a transient collection or transitory collection. If we give thought to these, it will be very helpful, because it is jikta due to which we face means all kinds of problems, issues, all psychological issues, and all physical, mental suffering are to be traced to the root of this cognitive mental affliction of the view of transitory collection, which is which is a mental factor which grasps at I and mine. And if we clearly identify that, it will make subsequent views much easier to relate to, and how these subsequent cognitive mental afflictions have relevance to how we feel in our day-to-day life.
다디 반된 다워도 우먼주베 어디 최저 가도 근데 송도 당몽아시 당몽아 세 삼당 그랬어 만지직다 네 nga yuwa zimbe chigda kigres 당몽아시 달신 다기 디시 nge se nganzi chigda kigres 안 디왕게 아니 nyomo chada nyomo 대왕게 레사가 on게 아니 코와다 나기요레스 다디 사무나르단데 수술라 사무담베이나 아니 수술라 사무다용데 니중계와 니중계요 니중계를 팽기요레와 니중 rani ki 동해 그 자와 테레샤 다 딜레 탈고도 삼당디 니중제도 요라 다디 니 rani 코와라 코다 rani ki 코와 코다 딜레 삼다네 ndo simje shen samdang yu ni shen me be ningji ge di ke jumbo resta di bande dawa thabo go umaji go khran la thangbo den sung sha resro.
So this view of transitory recollection is what the great master Chandrakirti clearly states in the homage stanza of Madhyamika Avatara, or the entry to middle way, where in the first line he says, Tangbo Ngashi Dala Shin Gyurjing, beings, including oneself, thinking to themselves, I become attached to self. And that is the view of a transitory collection grasping at I. Next, then beings thinking to themselves, mine or my, become attached to things, which is the view of a transitory collection grasping at mine. And due to these two forms of the view, we can't help but suffer from chakdang attachment and animosity, from which subsequent mental afflictions flow, and from which actions are unleashed, and then the vicious momentum of a vicious cycle is continued. So when we think about this process from personal perspective, how almost invariably we are constantly engaged in the view of a transitory collection, and how then helplessly, unstoppably, one is caught in the vicious cycle. And this helped when you think about this in relation to oneself, and the consequences of this view, one develops a yearning and a disillusionment, a gut-wrenching disillusionment, and therefore one develops genuine sense of definite emergence for liberation. Because how long is one prepared to keep on going like that? We have had enough of it. And now, just as one is caught in the wheel of existence involuntarily, so are all other beings with whom we have had nurturing relationships. They too, suffering from the two views of the transitory collection, they too are caught, and not being able to bear their suffering, one's heart goes out to them, and that is one feels empathetic pain and wish that they be free from this predicament. And therefore reflection on this in relation to other arouses compassion.
Da di jidan di ko da churanzo zinda mangbo nyenye da geje di mangbo koyo re wa lakwa de ngong ngama sama cost de tingma khashe jikda uma jigwe go la shedu di kadula ni da mi komdang jimba zo be yebo joyo re wa da ina ya di khashe de saba yore ni churanzo da mangbo nyenyo zi ina de zo 망고 양양자양 지수 티제 디돌라다 곰디스캡 네 삼무데스탄토비나 당원에 스스 처음으로 나라야지 나제 수총로야 아니 지배 란진지기 로드조 수총로야 아니 하과도 징암다당 덕바당 마지바당 도조데스 뉴로야라 디돌라 곰제기나 텐데 펜도 요레스로.
So this issue of the view of a transcendental collection, which is at the root of our samsaric aimless wandering, many people, anyway, many people were able to listen to the discourses during summer retreat that the Chandrakirti organized, and therefore people are very conversant or somewhat conversant with these. And there are some new people, and if you can also study the psychology behind and the view of a transitory collection, and think about, meditate, think about, and then this meditation on these will help how to deal with different mental afflictions, different emotions that arise in our daily life. For instance, how one behaves, or how sense of haughtiness arises, how self-cherishing arises, how fear, paranoia. When one is paranoid, it is heightened expression of the view of a transitory collection, suspecting the undesirable. And self-cherishing is very much rooted, self-cherishing attitude or self-centeredness is very much rooted in the view of a transitory collection. So daily meditation, reflection on these will help initially minimize the intensity of different mental afflictions and gradually leading to their total severance.
당에 된다 곰자 대진 림바 숨구서지 다마 식시에샤나스로.
So to this end, I think I should present how to meditate on these in 3 steps, 3 stages.
당부디 ngaas야 돼 ngazo ngaase samrus 당겨라 단당아 아니 진짜 처닝이 여스러와 야 저런서 nga 기부도 nga 기부민도 서 지여라 근데 nga 대당 니 다른 쇼베징아 계산게가 딩가서 아니 그 주어도니 시다기도 주어만도니 시다기도 직받다기도 어다디 수수 문진 간대치기도 수수수기 문진 수수기 배 켈린 간대지 수수 이지 간대치기도 어다디 뭐 송으레스로.
So first of all, I'd like you to clearly identify the I. When you I, what are you doing now? I'm listening to Dharma teaching, or therefore I'm happy, or alternatively, I'm not happy. So what is this I like? Is this I different from the I you had this morning, or your I yesterday? And so how do you relate to this I? Do you see this I, the I now and I this morning and yesterday, as changing or not changing? And how do you how do we believe it is? So if you can think to yourself and how you relate to your I and identify it, how you identify it. Do you identify it as unchanging or changing?
다드네 아니 당원조 남배추 로종 망고 제유나 네코 다데다 마레스와 상로지 땅인데 아데다 마레 교도 계산 아데다 마레 한대가데 마레 상당기 먼저 김진 상당나 챌린지다 치도 그래로 니는 먼저 김진 상당인데 야디 마레 상 야지로 수진에 단대게 가데다 단단하게 깨진감에게 깨지게 가지죠라 아니 벤진 진짜 마용 공경 가데다 양 단다 단계 지 꿀롱 가서 단계 꿀롱 제인바 꿀롱 제도지 가데 단다 상로다는데 는 가지 베투 타른 니어버지를 상로다는데 네 베진 다디에 지베인 버서 진거래 가지 징지도 스타 용거라 어다 도즈릭도서 이제 미다과 타모마도 파르도 디 짐바디 달 현지기 용거라는 상보랑 가지 징지 당 아니 지 도서 상마달 현지에 따고점에 당진색으로 먼저다 남배추 로좀 망고 제유인자 아니고 단지 군다 다 켈린 지금 말와 미지게 감이다 그래 따고래스나 미다 그래 남상코 밀레렌 잡디도 렐하고 여러 아주 셈나네 켈린치디 야 따고지 용거라 제가 밀레케지 셰인데 미다 그래 데 도마전데 대송자래 뒤제던제 미대과 라자르스나 뒤제던제 미다 되고 보도지 셰도고라 밀시 그래서 셈 띵딩의 이지 가르쳐서나 ngaji tsangma chikpa ta de ge yor ngaji jin de lenje de la dal lenje ji ta zu ji yong yor lenje se de ta chi gyumjen samdam go ta ne tsangma lo ge ji ta ta go gyo do me din gyo ji ta yong yor da mi da go chamo ma do sa de dan ji lenje yong yor da kan da wa ngon samol ta mi da go tam to yin ni dan ji lenje yong ma ro de jimbal lenje ge jindan de dang ji ta go jindan de 다다 요랑랑 상말로 뭐지용 되어
So when I ask you, does your eye listening to the teaching and or does your eye from yesterday, are they the same or the different? Then immediately you said to yourself, oh, they are obviously quite different. They are. You say the two eyes are different. The eye listening to the teaching and the eye from this morning, they are quite different. There's no way the two are the same. And because there's a temporal divide, and therefore you see the two as being different. When I close the gap between the two eyes, for example, is the eye at the time of arousal of motivation and the eye listening to the teaching, are they the same? Given the proximity of that time, 2 times concerning eye, it is plausible for people to think, oh, obviously, I'm the same person listening to the teaching and who did this meditation. Until we realize subtle impermanence, we suffer from innate grasping at permanence of things. And although logically you can say, obviously, the eye at the time of arousal of motivation and the listening are different because of the despite proximity, they are still different. and you use kind of a logic to say they're different, but deep down in the core of one's being, one still thinks to oneself that they are the same I. And when asked why, because when asked why, because one cannot precisely delineate the difference in the first moment I and the second moment I, in a moment by moment, due to sheer proximity of the two moments. The passage of time collapses between the moment. Therefore, the two I's in two distinct moments are not seen to be different because of the sheer rapidity of the passage of time. The two I's collapse into one, thinking to oneself, they are the one. However, when one is asked to explain, then one says, "Oh, the two eyes have to be different." Why? Because the Buddha has himself declared that all composite phenomena impermanent. Therefore, I must be impermanent too. That said, in the saying that in the very same breath, one still thinks, one still cannot help thinking the I in the first moment and the second moment, the proximity of which is so close, and therefore the two I's of the two moments are the same. So until such time as understanding subtle impermanence, experience of subtle impermanence directly, we will suffer from this innate grasping at permanence of self.
다디 유다메 다들라 금진 삼다니 맞아 다디 게지 탐모디 녀야다 주두고 말해 거 성어서 수도 요걸 고규 차대요라 가서 녀야다 무슨도 또 두고요 말해 먼저 미다고라고디 먼저 무슨도 또 두고도 미시도와 당 단다 유기 매버 차도 당 강바지고 당 아니 직도하지 로하다지 싱든데 마 차바다 다든데 미다고라고 단다 유기 매버 차도 이제 뒤제도 뒤제 미다고라고로 라고도 무슨 이 통구도와 통구여래 다 참어디 줌제 삼다는 메시지기 아니 줌제 삼다면 더 메시 아니 먼저 하고 말들 줌제 삼다는 먼저 싱그레스로
So with regard to subtle impermanence, at this stage, we cannot directly experience as is, but we can deduce, although we cannot directly experience subtle impermanence, and therefore the eyes of the two moments so close to each other as being different, although we can experience it, but we can deduce that they are distinct temporal entities using logic. It's only by employing logic and that subtle impermanence is inferred, not directly experienced. What we do directly know is cause impermanence, like something that is here now disappears, the collapse of the house, the falling of the tree, and so on. These are forms of cause impermanence, and we kind of experience them because we can see them, but not the subtle one. Subtle one cannot be experienced, but can be deduced.
어다 디 아디 게지 주어도 지 셈바이나 강부 지 이제지 깨베이나로 봐 먼저 이제야 당아디 게지 주어도 니지레 땐데 데데 니지 요 말에 삼노단 토이나 이제 잠징에는 지도이나 먼저 심난지 당당한서 지 동해다 남자다 마지고 망고 쉬어지 랑쇼도 매우 자로 먼저 미지가 알는 내가 지기도 미지가다 튼중치기도 아니 제송스 다른 쇼베로 책도자 셰송스 다른 쇼베 알아야 아니 너버 제송스 니 계산 알마지 버서송스 먼저 김제 만차 데베니즈 genja 텐제 단다마지 버서요 아니잖아 타사라 그네잖아 대차라 아니 나 먼저 단다가 지우면도 아니 계산 알아 너버 제송스 라비언데 이 견자 쇼도 김제 때문에 저는 별 lokwa 쇼지래더라
So when we give due diligence to considering subtle impermanence, a subtle momentary change of I changing with the passage of a moment of the I, and then this will educate the mind, because up until then we have stress, paranoia, and so on. Once we understand the momentary nature of I, then it will reduce suffering, it will reduce paranoia, it will reduce fear, and and then the intensity of harm done to one by others, the intensity will diminish. For example, people say, I was harmed by the person this morning, and I was bullied, or I was lied to or harmed yesterday. And those eyes are already gone, they are not there. But one recalls, one brings them back, one recalls them, and then makes the present I become unhappy on the grounds of experience undergone by I this morning and I yesterday. They are gone. And why do we go back and as if we want to suffer more by recalling? And the way our mind works and bringing unnecessary problem, and this way of dealing with I, and then suffering different consequences, is something quite strange. Long.
그래서 삼로 직 땅용으로 마 직 땅용되네. 다 계산 미지가 수술라 직두자지 라비에나. 데 라브라 다 가두데라 미 제두자도 저 잠물리나 미도 쉬어드레스와. 라비에나 가두데라 콘데 사그라다와. 다 되네 다 들이 배 교매버체 콘데 사데니데 수수신데로 미지 고 자자라다. 직전에 미디 계산 미디 시에사에로 가시로 나는 저 로주 로니슈 로숨주 관계 내주든데 단다 냐데기도 심나라 냐제 데마지오 미통 상마 찾아다 이 너버제니 미디 통사를 겨울렌사를 가서 요마래 다 너버군에 제니 수수 마지버서지 되더라 수수 디지 양자양자 진데디 다 마치고 손이 수술이면 지금 미래면 다 오네서는 삼직 다요너라.
So when we ponder on this issue, it will educate the mind not to engage in the futility of and the senseless mental dwelling in the past. And obviously, when somebody said yesterday morning, because they were provoked, and they said, "You are the worst person in the world." And that was said. Let's imagine in the morning, maybe 10 a.m., for example. And at the time, the mind is hurt. But then the I, whose mind was hurt, the I is in the past. The moment of mind that was hurt is already in the past. And yet, rather than letting it be, and let them, rather than allowing the time and the I move into the past, we chase back and bring it back. And then, as if we want to suffer once more what was experienced, the unpleasant experience by the I at that particular time. For example, people still remember harm caused by someone 10 years ago. And, 10 years ago, the person that experienced the pain of harm 10 years ago is already 10 years back in the past. The harmer who harmed you said something, they've gone. They have moved on, but you haven't moved on. You're still dwelling in the same rut, in the same groove of pain. And maybe the person who harmed you, they have moved on. Or maybe they have moved on to the next life, but you are still caught. But one is still caught, stuck in the same rut, as if you want to experience that pain. Why is it that we do that when in deep down what we want is not this, the opposite of it?
어디 남미다고 더 삼는다나 배 편도 첨부 망고 요래로 어디 남배기 최진이지 당보 미다고 삼단 거야 되다 개점을 쉬어지래 와대나네 지 잘라라 작신처로 둬야다 충으로 둬야 아는 되바 충으로 둬야 아니 지 밀어 쿤진 충으로 둬야 남다 충으로 둬다 편도 배 첨부 요래 돼 곰디 야토베 나로
So meditation on impermanence really is highly educational, and the folly of going back to suffer when there's no need for that is a very important learning experience. And therefore meditation on impermanence will really minimize many kinds of mental affliction, attachment, resentment, attachment to people, attachment to things. So a serious Buddhist practitioner should do diligence to reflecting on impermanence, and it will really bring sense and sanity to the mind.
다 전에 니버딘다 다 니버디로 다 되게 셔나다 망고 셔요 다 셔모셔라 다 저 섬데스 단트네 하고 요래 다 항상 다 니버디 곰단디 인더스로
So although there's a lot more to talk about it, but in the interest of time, So let me move on to the second one, and that is, I said I will present meditation on this in 3 stages. Now the second one, Losla.
다 ngādi midagwadare rwa, ngādi midagwadare gyuwada dhugo res. Inayang ngādi pungbole tuyanshenbe wāng gyuwa budawe shirwa. Rangyawa jikda tagiyo res ngāsidi. Ngā midagwadare res gyuwa dhugo yo res. Inayang ngayagi ngarang pungbunga. Pungbunga silamsay mashi ngay kangbadan lakbadan. Ani jikdwa tsangmala wāng gyunyeji ngā jik. Tinte ngādi yang susu tazula ya jik dewa medin jo rangyawa tazu jik. Ta deji dangi nangsigi yoro kashi cheyo dele di chamo jada. Nga chadi shilapsha narwa nga nanzi di charnadi. Anzu tsangmala yore lenji charnadi ya yore sirwa tsangmala la ya. Anzu kansang dami pe madok sakwa charnadi yunga maze. Ani zimbaya yungu yore rwa anzu di lola charwa di 예제전에 땡원에 레스와 풍불에 텐션베 랑자웨 아직 요레스 난게도 대이 땡아이스다 땡아이 다대 시우자전부 이스다 다대 요레스로 하면서
Now the second one is I'd like you to consider the seeming autonomous I. Normally, the translation is self-sufficient, substantial existence of I. So here, when now one acknowledges, one acknowledges and saying to oneself, yes, indeed, I is impermanent, I changes, I is fleeting, impermanent. I acknowledge that. However, there's something about I that therefore I feel holy. I feel that I is significant because despite its being fleeting, changing, it has an air of autonomy about it, being the controller of the body and mind. And that autonomous I is called a self-sufficient, substantially existing I, which seems to be the controller of the 5 aggregates. If one has difficulty about what the 5 physio-psychological aggregates are, then say to oneself, there is a seeming autonomous I that has sway over my body and mind, because you say my mind, my feet, my hand. Whenever you say my, then that I claims what is seen to belong to it as is an object of control and a domain. And that I is that I is seen to be autonomous, autonomous in the sense that it exists on its own without needing for its identification via the aggregates of via body and mind. It can stand on its own. So such an autonomous I appears to our unawakened mind. Not only such an I appears, one thinks that appearance is correct, right? So so an I appears that is different from aggregates, body and mind. And one says to oneself, and this is it, this is me. So there's both grasping, there's appearance of such an I, and that appearance is believed to be real. And that is the second folly about identification of I.
다 나라도 근데 로라 차단데 요원한신 이지 저디 낭신 원래라 요나다 아니 야고 쉬지도 아카자 풍불라 대화면이 지금 아지 요나 아니 야고 쉬도 아니 풍부나나 가 나고면도 알아 풍부 저거도 돼가 저거도 라가 룰을 나자에 돼가 나자에 라고면도 하고 대화면도 알아 왜 내지디 대화 쉽지 요된 저지와 내가 저 셈나라 데메드진지 완전히 아직 이지 저거요 세상 거니 다다 대금에다 뭐에니지다 수수 이지지 아니디 로가도 되기도 와 세상 될 낭내 미팅 봤어 배낭안서 추나게 다와디 다와는 게 요르들래 대 다원군에 레테는 대 다원군에 말아봐 추나나 다원군에 요 말아봐 지난 시제가 저 셈나게 찬나게 공부를 된심에 다든지 수수 난게 요래 나와나시 이지체인데 문에 이 튕기 요러 대나 아니 로바 차러봐 디 문에 딘데지나 네 지 강반 나고 나와다 닝 나와든지 나나 심마지웨이드 nga jiw민도 nga jiw도 라야민도 하고 대화민도 알아 이나야 네게 대화 요와데 뇨에터네 딩기요래봐 nga 강반 고고단 강반데 나디 nga 나기도 nga 저거도 서와 nga jiw도 nga jiw민도 서와 예 부모가다 왜 대제 파주 대제 대대 여러 것이지 대매게 아니 자원이네 연가와지 뭐에니즈라 요마라 이나가저 뭐에니즈를 매든 조지 유텐제 록바쇼네 로버디 온게 아니 투제 안 투버디올라 이지제 대왕게 아니 베 먼저다 베디 가서래 투베가나 투버제 투버 니자선다야 자제데데 그래서 디가나 단도 딩사 아니 드라스도 오는데 망고 사제베 더블 티버 코라 아니 베디 투제 아니다 데데기요라 세상다 디 문에 제나다 삼무당인 주 제가 염세오래도 아주 성서로
So there's a huge discrepancy between how things are and how things appear. How things appear with regard to I, which one acknowledges is to be changing, impermanent, but one attaches great importance to this I because it appears with a character of being self-sufficient, autonomous, unrelated to the body and mind. And that's how it appears. If that appearance were true, if that appearance were to be the case, then happy days will have started. Why? Because if I is not related to the body and mind, then a lot of the problems that I normally faces will not be experienced, and such that when the body has a headache, the I being different from the body, autonomous, existing in isolation from the body and mind, I will not suffer, I will not be hungry, I will not be thirsty, I will have no heart problem, physical issues, and nothing would be better than there an I that exists in isolation from the body and mind. And the two would become absolutely unrelated. Just as the moon in the water and the moon in the sky. The moon in the water seems to be the moon in the sky, but the moon in the water is just a reflection of what is in the sky. So the long and the short of these is, if the seeming isolated autonomous I were not related to the body, then all physical problems will have no implications to the I. And so what happens is, unfortunately, there's a huge connection between what happens to the body and the mind. What happens to the body and mind also happens to the I, unfortunately. However, as I've said, until we wake up to reality, we will always believe that they that they are different. And then what happens is there is a distortion, there's a disinformation to the mind. There's a disinformation coming from ignorance to the mind that the I is unrelated to the body and the mind. And then there's mistakes occur. Mistakes are acted upon, disasters follow, and as if double, triple mistakes and distortions are not enough, people take drugs to complicate the situation further. And therefore, the way we want to be happy and the way we entertain things, ideas in the mind, Geshe says this is very yamtin, means very strange.
Oh yeah, that the da gom ja do ra gom ja mang bu yo ra de. That dine that is in sumba de shebi na. Da phung bu la ten na da tu gu do je da phung bu ji do ji ne ya yang je ni ni ju de so shi ba. Phung bu la da jik de wa yus na re. Da nga se de jik da du sam da na de del phe je. Del du s le la ba yo re ben nga na zo 당부 탭 더 퍼버 더 좀 당연히 아니 당부 퍼버 코랑 베자자 자탐바디 아니 유 코랑 거네야 두된 조스르시라 코랑 거네야 두된 조스르시 먼저 능주지 용되고 랑원에 두었어야 들어와다디 패진 삼담이나 그냥 마스디 아니 풍부 셈네야 풍부 기드네야지 도도로지 두두서 여된 조스르시라 랑 랑원에서 지고 어딘데 능주지 요르당 그런저라 디 능주디 양 나와데 이지체네 딩원에 요리 되는데 아니데 다 간상게 단지 타셔야지 차게 열어.
So that is the second stage of distortions pertaining to the view, distortions caused by the view of a transitional collection. Now the third one is one says to oneself, okay, I now realize that there is a connection between the body and the I, and I realize that I cannot exist autonomously in isolation because of what has been shown to be so, and because of one's own experience. Whatever happens to the body mind happens, and therefore I does depend on the aggregate body and mind. However, I cannot help but feel I exist while depending on the body and mind. I exist inherently from within the body, from within the aggregate, somewhere among the aggregates. The dependent I can be found. There is an inherent I. For example, when you see the cup, how does the cup appear to one? To us, the cup immediately appears existing in and of itself as a cup. It doesn't, when the appearance of the cup hits one's visual perception, there's a cupness. There's a cupness about the cup, and so there's an appearance of inherent or intrinsic. There's an appearance of intrinsic existence of the cup, and unfortunately, what we do is we don't leave the appearance to a mere appearance, but we believe the appearance to be real. And then this causes the view of a transitory collection, believing I to be inherently real.
Tā dī nī tīndē ngā dī nāng zū dī tā ngā sē dī tsē nē tā tsē gu rā ngā tō ngō nē tā wā ngā dī mē nā ngā yō mā rā bē sī nā ngā yō rē sī nī nā ngā tsē tā guñzūb jī ān dī tsē zū tā tā nā wā dī tsē zū dī yā wā jī chē gu rē māng gu jī kī yā dī lē lā wā shī wā jī dī gu tā tōng bā nī sī dī tā dī tsē nī yā mī jō dī rē rā wā shī dī lē lā wā dī yō mā rē rō jī pena moda dawa jina ane moda kolo moda re moda tho moda re moda engine moda re de mare de lobjon je cheu mare wa jidan miji ge singiro wa dirwa moda engine moda mare sigre kolo mare sig de da de lela ore de zo rig de zo samdan lela ore kashe ga da moda je ni ya yo mare de dongban ye re je de lela ndo ko shi shi do de lela wo yo mare de kunzob ji on de chezu de gan la samla shuk chambo 당제 대위나 아니 다 체달 홍도래 다 뭐라 민도스로 모데 콜로데 뭐라 말에 모데 인진데 다지 말라디 조디 로 레치니데 뭐라 말에 콜로 말에 토 말에 꾸자 말에 빠와 말에 로그 말에 레레레네 말에 마스터 모데 요 말에 스남다 어느 모데 요 말에 민도 왔을라는데 디 체달 홍도가 요라 모데 요라 먼저 모데 세지 요라 모데 요구 요라 모데 사와 요라 모데 닝고 요라 먼저 모두 땅기 요래 와 디지나 디그 타녀디 요러 와 그래서 군접기 안에 체단 직체로 디 디자인디 직신 거야 디 캐쳐 모래로
So now if I exist as it appears inherently by itself, then we need to find it. We need to seize the I and find the I for us to identify the I and establish the validity of the seeming validity of the seeming inherent I. And here we need to, when we search for such an I, we need to search for that I in terms of we need to search for that I in terms of conventionality and ultimate reality context. So many people think, many people seem to think, emptiness is quite easy because what appears is not true. Not knowing that to find, to appreciate and gauge emptiness of I, for example, really, we need to use two-pronged approach to finding it. So, for example, people say, what if the car, for example, what is a car? Car doesn't exist. Why? Because then they interject with the question, do you think the wheel of the car is a car? You say no. The wheel is not a car. The engine is not a car. The wires are not a car. and the roof is not the car, the body is not the car, and so on. And therefore, and indeed, the wheel is not the car, the engine is not the car, and that each and every part of the car is not a car. Therefore, they say, see, there's no car, and that is the emptiness of car. And then, the car doesn't exist because none of the parts of the car is not the car. Oh, there's no car, and one falls into the extreme of nihilism. It's not that the car is not there. The car is very much there. We buy car, we buy new car, EV, we buy EV, we drive EV. And so why? Because car exists. That car cannot be found by way of identifying each of the parts of the car to be car or not is not the right approach to finding the car. No.
당은저 가르다지 시고라데 모더문에 때네 다디가 차셔망고 질라 때네 에네코 따베다 타도게 우마딘주에 따와시나 코 민잠지로 민잠지 때네 망고 질 때네 따산조 민잠지레스 뭐네즈디 찔러지 때네 충된조지레스 라로 다는 저 셈이 컨디션 모더서 다오르바지데 도도도지 요데브라지로 컴퍼니다 소단에 된데와 걸렌치기요 맞다 단도 도와시데 독대걸라르지 중대여서 삼당거 여러 랑문에 자자 자탄 바라바시데 칸나 됴메지 투대와지 모더지 이지 체용 거로 딘데기 응저 셈나라 찬난지 여르다 디 뭐에 심바체제라와 디제제니 미니바디 아니 모델링 게 동반이래 라고다 디리 세상 딘 레라고 요 말았딜
So how does car exist? Because car performs function. Although none of the individual parts of the car is the car, and not even the fully assembled parts of the car into one body is not the car, because that composite fully assembled entity is the basis of being called car. So how does car exist? The car exists by depending on the multitude of parts and the multitude of assembled parts, and depending on these, a label car is affixed onto the cohesive body of parts. So that is the actual that is how car actually exists, dependently, contingently on the parts and on being called car, that is to say, by being labeled car. However, to our naive, unawakened mind, whenever we see car, we never think to ourselves, instinctively, we think the car plunked into existence as a car out of the blue before one's mind, not dependent on anything. So there is an inherent carness about the car. However, what is being said is the car does not exist in the way it seems to exist. The way it appears is it appears to exist inherently by itself without depending on anything, when in reality the car is dependent on, in reality, the seeming independent car is not independent. It's very much a contingent phenomenon because it is contingent upon all the parts that go to make the car and the assembling of the parts, and then being is dependent on being called car. So what is being ruled out is independent, inherently existing car that our naive mind believes exists, when in reality the car is not independent, it is dependent. Losla.
da dinde gi samudaya de la ni kuzuma ne la ga junde gi tenjung chashel dimbe tenjung mingyang da yuzang gi tenjung da tenjung di ye nam sha samudang thubi na ani chue tamje tene chungwa ma shi ju tene ma ching we rawan ne to yo ma re samudang yun ju an dinde gi khala döme gi ra we nga jik ta mindu sirwa tesa nge nglen cha ga ta nga de mindu 다 디데 가도 매나 아니 다 단다 편제를 간도 깔레제에서 디시디 잡대로 아니 수수수 항상으로 찾아다 다다 배사야 당에 벨레가 주서 배 노르제 보스 특히는 매든 조직 요구 조직 대jas다 다 레민도스 아니 셈데 배다 가서래 셈려야 아니 가서래다 당부도 하나 남다다 신나든데 제시브레서 와래 다음에 당부 관이는데 신나 지금 여러 가지는 뒤균직이요 삼산데 다 매우 잘하고 여러 아니 아직 다음에 그런 공부 유니인데 있는 아니 백 인제 지금 왜서인데 아니 배 가와 쉬우지 게다 배 셈나 가와 가디 쉬우지 게게 해서 거라
So here the law of dependent arising, or the law of relativity, is crucial to understanding how things actually exist at the conventional level and how things exist at ultimate level. So we need to understand the dependent arising, in how things depend on their causes and conditions. Things are dependent on causes and conditions which have kind of contributed to their emergence into existence. Secondly, things are dependent on the constituent parts, on the constituents of the parts, and a phenomenon which is the whole is dependent on the parts. Short of parts, there is no whole, and therefore, and thirdly, then the Takla means things are dependently imputed conceptually. Things are dependently imputed on the basis of their designation, that is just on the parts. Then conceptually a phenomenon is imputed to be that phenomenon. The car is the same, therefore I is the same. I is dependent on the causes and conditions, on the parts of the I, and I is very much just nothing more than a mere imputation by the mind. And so when we, in other words, given these three modes of dependence, which I fulfills completely, then you think to yourself, what happened? What happened to my eye, which I held so strongly before? Now it has disappeared. because the inherently I cannot inherently I cannot be found, for three principles of dependence establishes that. It is as if one has been, and that inherent I acted like a boss. I boss you around to do too many things. One wakes up and then one says, the boss who bossed me around, nobody now doesn't exist anymore. And at this point, when people initially come to realize absence of inherent I, because inherent I, although which hasn't existed, but was held to exist, was held in one's mind to exist. And because it has been believed for so long in one's mind that it exists truly. However, when the logic and personal experience through meditation shows indeed how erroneous one been in holding on to inherent I. Now the inherent I doesn't, there is an inherent I, then initially fear, people experience fear, loss of I, because nominal I is associated with the inherent I. People think there's no I. People are overcome by fear. And so in other words, people who realize emptiness for the first time, before, without any prior reflection, they sense a loss of I and they have great fear. However, people who have meditated and who have familiarized themselves with the absence of inherent I, when the absence of inherent I is actually experienced, then they are filled with a joy, as if they have found what they have been looking for. Loss.
And Jerome, Tended Sunda Pandin Dawe Lexigi, so Pandin Dawe Lexigi, Yoga Time Sechenes, Lame Tingi Tomes, Dagi Yining as Pandin Dawa Tawageta, Gandhi Lexe, and Denju Umala Jubadi, Mata Yundu, Yoga Time Sechenes, the Pena. 아니 다와기 다와 정연 다와디 베 뮤트네 니마니스 뮤트네 여베이나 청와마 청와 주변나시 여베이나 아니 문바 탐제 세로라 문바 세네 아니 문바나게 지금 마통베 강예디게 세로라 지등 먼저 나군나라 잘라 마통베 동에다 강예 먹고도 가로와 베 왜딘데지 요나 아니 되게 베데 동아디 세기로 되난시 아니 라메 팅지 통에 세스데 라마디 제준 자매양게 네 가딘라 때네 아니 반덴 다와 탑에 송신 여게 네 다메 남샤데 통용도 장가라 다 다메 세야데 단데 간주 셔야게 다데 민둑 삼 통용데 스스 셈라야다 아니 예수 톱선스다 다게 이니 예수 톱스 다 코베나랑 예수 톱야데 다메 통에 예수 톱 그러면서 다메 마탄사고 먼저 단지기 요걸로 더대 거라 네 그런저 내가 망고치도 깔래 카제 네 예수 도구다 데 예수 데다 예수 스케티기요 말에 단지 온게 양자 류를 대해서 예수다나 심는 예수 대우면도 제자다 다메 그 되는 삼로제 거지 이주잔지 거지 니베이네 심나라 예수 태야 된대 용거래 라메 튕기 통해 통해서 다기 있는 예수 톱 성도하다 제자인데 뭐네 대 삼로 당고야 되다 개좀 쉬어지래로 어디가나.
So here, the great Lama Tsongkhapa, in his celebrated writing called Praise of Buddha, by way of his par excellence revelation of the law of dependent arising. Towards the end of this text called Dental Dawa, Praise with the Buddha through dependent arising, he says, Bandin Dawa lecture worker somewhere, worker chongwe sejaba. Dag lame tingu tonga se dag yelan yesu top. So what this Geshe says, this is it's a very telling how emptiness, when one's experience has the effect of a deep sigh of relief. Here, Lama Tsongkhapa, on experiencing emptiness directly, he feels sense of great gratitude to his guru, the Manjushri, through whose kindness he, Lama Tsongkhapa, has managed to get to the bottom of emptiness through the excellent discourse on emptiness by Chandrakirti, whose explanation, whose eloquent, cogent, elegant explanation were like a full moon fully waxed. And if Geshe says, if there was if there were a series of full moon strung on a string, and then it remains suspended in the space, how much light will the moons shed? They will just fill the space and see everything clearly. In the same way, Lama Tsongkhapa likens Chandrakirti's treatment of the principle of dependent arising to shed light on emptiness like a full moon. And he expresses sense of indebtedness to his guru Manjushri in helping to see emptiness in the full moon light of that cogent, eloquent description of emptiness by Chandrakirti. And then it says, now I have found final rest to my mind. And in a way, this is the great sigh of relief. And it is when we see experience and see and experience emptiness that real rest is experienced. Otherwise, the kind of rest that we take is partial rest. When we're resting bodily, our mind is racing again, stressed, and we don't really get the satisfying rest, let alone experiencing emptiness, as Lama Tsongkhapa has experienced himself. Even if we have some kind of presumption, assumption, we hypothesize emptiness, that things could be empty, because even that hypothetical or hypothesized knowledge of emptiness has far-reaching implications on how one will begin to see things in the future.
Oh yeah, that is our. Do you have question? No, no question. 2 minutes. Any day show. That's okay.
Let's get
Page 31. Short Mandala.
Losang.
Sashi Paki Shukshi Mekto Tam Ranji Kewati Sangye Shinku Mikha Ovati Nanda Shingla Shoka Sho Chetsu Lame Putse Nampatele Chochu Kepa Tam Losang Tempe Dome Sasungi Droga Musa Takdune Gyushi Idam Prayers of dedication. Due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha and lead all living beings without exceptions into that enlightened state. May the supreme true bodhicitta that has not arisen arise in glory, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Whatever slight positive potential I may have created, by paying homage, offering, and acknowledging my faults, rejoicing and requesting that the Buddha stay and teach, I now dedicate all this for full awakening. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best. By the victorious one thus pondered the 3 times, so then I can bodhisattva states. May the king of Dharma and Kapa's way of Dharma practice flourish. May the omens of our Buddha be ratified, and all the conducive circumstances be complete. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling true source of every soul benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzi-Gyatso, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Savior of the Snowland teachings and transmigrated beings, who makes extremely clear the path that is the unification of emptiness and compassion, to the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who upheld the subduous moral way, who served as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading much in us victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished discipline and honoring the 3 truths, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please swiftly return. By relying on the 2 accumulations of myself and others in the 3 times, may the teachings of the conqueror Losang blaze for a long time. The prayer for the swift return of Lama Sopa Rinpoche by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Peerless teacher, assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Prateka Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged, incomparable when I can make requests. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefits and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace, or the great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the 3 truths and the great waves of bodhicitta for the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of the reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples.
Good night, Losang and everyone.
No, thank you.
Good night, Losang. Good night, Tony.